This one is gonna piss people off. So every once in a while, or once a week, I do a video in which I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for, something that I know will forever be used against me as evidence that I am a bigot. Something that will fill my Twitter mentions for 2 months with people saying that I sell trans people out. I don't sell trannies of the vehicular or human variety. So no, you shouldn't email me for a discount price on a tranny. I don't do that. It's my view, however, that while the truth can be harsh, it can't be bigoted. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I've never had a problem swallowing the truth, and I actually think there's a power in recognizing the truth, because it'll set you free and such. Transgenderism is a mental disorder. That's a statement that I've made in a number of interviews and podcasts, but I've never done a full-fledged video on it. And I've seen a few videos on YouTube about this topic, some of which are okay, but I've never seen a single one that doesn't have at least a little bit of misinformation. And so my goal here is to correct that. Rebel Media's recent video comes to mind, and the video was okay, but there are just some things that it got blatantly wrong, to be honest. This is also a topic that is incredibly frustrating for me because whenever I see people talking about it, I feel like half of them are just treating it with kid gloves and being incredibly politically correct about this issue, and the other half are just shrouded in misinformation, and the conversation just kind of goes nowhere. I'll explain. People who are transgender have what's called gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a mental disorder listed in the DSM-5, which is the leading source of academic information about mental disorders. It's basically a really strong and persistent identification with the opposite sex. It makes a person extremely uncomfortable with their body, specifically their sex-specific characteristics. For example, a male to female transsexual will be extremely dysphoric about having an Adam's apple or having male height. And a female to male transsexual will most likely be dysphoric about having breasts or large hips. It also manifests in the individual being distressed about the expectation to fill a gender role that's not comfortable to them. Sometimes gender dysphoria can be incredibly debilitating to a person or just mildly disruptive to their life. It's important to note, however, and this is something that the Rebel Media video actually got wrong, and that's that gender dysphoria does not result in hallucinations. And what I mean by that is that it's not as if it's a dysmorphia where someone looks into the mirror and genuinely sees the opposite sex or genuinely believes through some type of hallucination or delusion that they are the opposite sex. It's actually the exact opposite. It's when someone is very starkly aware of what they are and they're extremely uncomfortable or upset about it. If someone really had some sort of delusion that made them believe that they are, in fact, the opposite sex, they actually wouldn't have gender dysphoria because they would just be fine. Like, they would be happy about it. But nevertheless, it is a mental disorder, and people seem to get really upset when they hear that, but simply classifying something by its objective descriptor is not inherently inflammatory. People can certainly weaponize this fact against people and use it as an insult or, say in a confrontational way, but it is technically true. I mean, it really only has as much stigma as you assign to it. For example, being claustrophobic or depressed or having, really bad social anxiety. These are all also examples of having a mental disorder, and they're a lot more common than being transgender, yet people, I don't think, have as much of an issue referring to those as disorders. So you shouldn't weaponize someone's disorder against them and use it as an insult, but you shouldn't be hiding it out of political correctness either, because that does a huge disservice to people who are suffering from it. This is what separates transsexuals from transgenders, as we call them lately. Basically, there are a lot of people out there who claim to be trans and also claim to not have dysphoria. And they think that getting an androgynous haircut or being a girl who wears baggy jeans makes them trans. No. And I don't say that to make being trans some sort of exclusive club in the same way that Black people don't deny Rachel Dolezal because they want to be in an exclusive club. It's more of just, we should properly classify things. So then it becomes a matter of, what do you do once you are diagnosed with this disorder? Currently, there are no known treatments. There are no pills you can take. There is no cure. The only thing that has an ounce of success for alleviating gender dysphoria is transitioning. Transition involves hormone treatments and sometimes surgical interventions to help the person resemble the opposite sex and move on with their life. And sometimes transitioning allows a person to move on and live a happy and fruitful life, and sometimes the dysphoria is extremely persistent and the person's life still isn't great. Some are of the opinion that transitioning is actually cruel to allow the person to do, and it's just feeding into the disorder. But to those people, I think it's important to pose the question, what else do they do? Because there is no other option other than transitioning, as faulty as it is. There's no cure, nothing you can take. You just kind of have to live with it. And in many cases, unfortunately, it's like too much to live with, and suicide rates are high for trans people. My opinion sits somewhere in the middle on that. I think that transitioning is not for everyone, but for some people it is really their best bet and it can be successful. I would, however, love for in the future there to be some sort of other option other than transitioning, because like I said, I don't think that it's for everyone. And I think part of the reason there's no funding going into finding a cure or a treatment is the political correctness factor. So let's just cut the shit. Admit that it's a disorder, and also don't weaponize the fact that it is a disorder against people. Because I feel like as long as there are people out there who are so politically correct that they deny that it's a disorder, there will always be people to rebut that and sometimes be dicks about it. And likewise, as long as there are people being dicks about it, there will be people who are defensive and deny that it's a disorder. It's just this big retarded cycle. And that is all for this video, but before I go, I'm going to link in the description an interview I did with Playboy magazine recently. It's a really, really good article, and it's very refreshing to see mainstream media covering a YouTuber in a positive and fair light. So yeah, read that if you want, or if you don't, and I'll see you next time. Bye.